Hello everyone. Today, I will be demoing how to easily add authentication to your app using Descope Skills. Usually, adding auth means digging through SDK docs, figuring out the right integration pattern for your framework, and making sure you're handling sessions and protected routes correctly. But with Descope Skills, you can instead give your AI coding agent Descope-specific instructions for how authentication should be implemented. In this demo, I'm going to start with a simple application that has no auth at all, then install the Descope skill, and ask my coding agent to add authentication to the app for me. So this is my starting point. I have a basic Next.js and React application, and right now, everything is completely accessible to all users, so there's no authentication or access control. Anybody can come on this website and look at the dashboard. They can see order history and customer information, and even access the settings, which is obviously not ideal. And we're going to implement authentication, so we're going to have a sign-in button up here that's going to only let users access dashboard and orders and customers if they're signed in and identity verified. And then for settings, we're going to implement step-up auth. So they're going to have to do an extra authentication step if they want to access the settings dashboard. So here we are in Claude Code, and these skills work for any coding agents, whether it's Claude or Cursor or some other one, but I'm just going to use Claude for this demo. First thing we're going to do is install the Descope marketplace called Descope/skills. Then we're going to do plugin install Descope-skills. And then to make sure that Claude recognizes all the skills that we installed, we're going to do reload skills. So now we're ready to prompt Claude and ask it to add auth. We can write a very simple prompt and it'll figure out all the details and backend implementation from the skill. So we've written a pretty simple prompt, and it's going to ask a couple follow-up questions and then start implementing everything. Notice that Claude realized to use the Descope Auth skill without me having to explicitly tell it to do so. And we're going to allow it to read from references during the session. Now it's reading our code implementation so it can figure out how to add authentication. Okay, and now it's done. As you can see, we've implemented protection using auth middleware. We've added the Descope signup or inflow, which I will show in the console in a second. And then we've added the step-up flow onto the settings page. And also we've added a .env file where we're going to set the Descope project ID in just a second. So before we see the app in action, all we have to do is go in and add our Descope project ID. You can find the project ID by navigating to app.descope.com and then going down to project here in the left sidebar and then copying the project ID from here. And this project ID is what's going to link your existing application with Descope. So all of the flows are going to come from this project with this project ID. All of the users, once they log in, they'll be listed here under this specific project with that specific project ID. So we're just going to copy this project ID and then replace it here. And now if we navigate back to our website, as you can see, we're forced to log in now. And this is coming from the Descope flow. If you head over here, we're using the signup or inflow, which looks like this. You can learn more about Descope flows in a separate video. But to give you a brief rundown, here's our Magic Lake authentication. Here's the social login with OAuth. And then we check if the user is a new user, if they're verified, and so on. So this entire screen is generated by Descope. You do not have to worry about implementing any authentication logic. We're going to hit continue with Google. Since it's the first time logging in, it's collecting some more information from me, like my full name. And now that I've logged in, I can access the dashboard. I can see orders, customers, and so on. However, the settings tab is still behind an extra step-up authentication step, so I'll have to log in again. I'm going to do Google once more. And now I have access to this settings dashboard. Let's take a look at the code now and see how the auth is actually implemented. As you can see here in the layout file, Everything is wrapped in this auth provider with the project ID. So as I mentioned, this project ID tells the app which specific Descope project we should be talking to, and we get it from our environment file. Next, the auth middleware is implemented in the proxy, and here, as you can see, the only public route is /login, and everything else is protected once again by the Descope project with this specific ID. For the login functionality, all we have to do is call the Descope flow by the flow ID, which you can find in the Descope console. So here for the login functionality, we're using the signup or inflow, and this will grab the web component and embed it right onto your UI. Then after successful authentication, you're going to be redirected to the /dashboard page. Settings, as you can see, uses this step-up gate page. And here, very similarly, we're just going to call the Descope flow with the ID step-up. Then once you successfully authenticate, we set the set verified variable to be true, and that allows you access to the settings page. And that's pretty much the entire authentication logic. If we go back to our Descope flow and then head to the users tab in the left sidebar, as you can see, this is my user identity that I just signed in with. So you can track all the users that are signing in or signing up into your application. And in terms of the code, we started with an application that had no auth whatsoever. We installed the Descope Skills, and then in one prompt, we were able to fully implement authentication logic and UI. You can check out our Descope Skills documentation or the open source GitHub repo to get started with this Descope Auth skill that we demoed today, or any other ones about Terraform, migration, FGA, etc. Thanks for watching.